Conclusion: to shoot or not to shoot. There have been many self-proclaimed experts in the field of Sasquatch research. Some have thought to know the migration routes, caves which they occupy, rivers they seem to favor, but in the opinion of this writer, there are, as yet, no experts. Many excellent researchers are presently working towards finding a Sasquatch and proving its existence, some of which are quoted and give attributes in this book. However, one of these animals is brought into captivity and examined closely and thoroughly, there will be no experts. A popular debate among those who believe in the existence of the animal is whether or not to shoot a Sasquatch in order to prove it as a legitimate animal or breed of animal. Now, before every naturalist and environmentalist raises arms against me and threatens flogging, I will make it clear that shooting one of these creatures is not an idea I personally relish. In fact, before 1980, I was dead set against it, always hoping that myself or someone else would be lucky enough to come across the remains of one who died of natural causes. Unfortunately, dead animal flesh does not last long in the wild. Scavenger animals and birds will most often destroy a corpse before man lays his eyes upon it. Also, it is a rare occurrence to find a whole skeleton in the wild in one piece. When a handful of men began seriously investigating the question of this animal, they met with closed minds in the scientific community, whose overwhelming attitudes of the late 50s and all throughout the 60s was that if such a thing existed, they would surely be aware of it. Although science has witnessed some advancements in this area, the attitudes remain very much the same. Most scientists claim neutrality on the subject of Sasquatch. I will keep an open mind if you can present me the body of one of these creatures. Closely reflects the current thinking. Very few scientists are willing to conclusively examine current evidence, although many will suggest that they are convinced that there is truly something out there. Professor Grover Krantz has studied the anatomy suggested by the footprints. He has concluded that in at least some cases the tracks in question could not have been faked. In fact, a set of footprints that Professor Krantz studied, found in Umatilla National Forest on the borders between Washington and Oregon State in 1982, were clear enough to show skin marks known as dermal ridges, like fingerprints on the bottom of the feet. Most fingerprint experts who have examined these tracks concluded they were real. My natural reaction was that this would lead to a serious confirmation by the scientific community that the Sasquatch is a definite possibility. It is unfortunate, however, that I must now share my doubts, because the individual who first found the tracks is openly admitted to faking prints in the past. We cannot be 100% sure that they had no hand in faking the dermal ridges. It has also come to my attention that given the right soil conditions, etc., it is quite possible to fake dermal ridges. Although the dermal ridges turned a few heads, little changes in the way of attitudes towards further research. Realistically speaking, the objectivity of science would demand that this information merely be filed and held for comparison without further evidence. It is this realization that has turned me around in my shooting question. I am persuaded that at least one must be shot in order to prove its existence and bring it into historical, environmental, and scientific realm. Without proof of its existence, the animal cannot even be properly protected from possible extinction. One notable different opinion on the shoot or not shoot question is that of my friend Professor Vladimir Markotic, Archaeology, University of Calgary, who has been avidly involved in researching the Sasquatch question since the early 1960s. Vladimir is unique in that he is the only legitimate scientist I know of who is against the shooting of a Sasquatch to prove its existence. He told me some time ago, "Tom, why should we have to prove anything anyway? If you shoot a Sasquatch and say, here's the proof, the scientists will say there was no such thing and they will claim that they knew of it all along." No doubt Vladimir has a point there. He also said we should not look at the subject so black and white. If the Sasquatch is real, then it is an important scientific discovery. If it is not real, then it has to be looked into anyway because it is an important piece of folklore. Vladimir has given new food for thought lore. I must say that the only thing I was thinking of whether or not the Sasquatch was real. So is the Sasquatch real? Is there a large bipedal animal running around in our mountains, forests, and bushes? This is for you to decide. My personal opinion is that the animal does exist. To date, There have been a total of 3,000 reported incidents, and the number grows by the day. Many of these reports were made by reputable people who do not personally know others who have made the same claims and told of the same encounters. There's also the Patterson film, the alleged dermal ridges, many tracks and clear prints, eyewitness testimonies, historical sightings from years ago, indigenous legends which tell similar stories of a similar creature. I am, however, willing to be convinced that there is nothing out there if the evidence eventually convinces me. The question of the Sasquatch will rage on as one of the most debated subjects of this century until one is either shot or brought into captivity. Food for thought, an unsolved mystery, a hoax, or an indigenous legend that lives on.